So we're in Kuf Hay. Really, we spent a lot of time really in on Sieve Bet in class. Not in We did it in the tour Beit Yosef, which is really discussing the question of Kli Rishon and Kli Sheni and the power of both of those. And we can get include in that maybe Irui, Kli Rishon, Kli Sheni, or I'm not Irui Kli Kli Sheni might be a whole nother discussion, but Irui from Kli Rishon to Kli Sheni, which is called the Irui Kli Rishon, um, which usually just to define it, usually means when we talk about Irui, although Rav Nachum could correct me, we're talking about when the kiluch is broken, right? We're not talking about like a continuous pour. We're talking about a pour that breaks, right? I would say. Um,
I'm not sure about that, but
you're not
I
sure?
guess
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
All right. We're thinking about that's you
We'll
can
think about that.
yeah,
I know what you're thinking about. You think about that case where like it pours on the ground and then it gets to the next pot.
exactly. So
There's a big discussion. Yeah, I think you might be right about that, but I'm not sure
yeah.
about that. Yeah,
I'm
we'll
not
have to
always
see.
Is
yeah.
this related to the same thing at the end of Avodah Zarah?
Um I was thinking in the seventh parak of Psachim, but what's the case in the Avodah?
I think it's Yayin Nesach
Oh
again.
yeah, yeah. Yain Nesach has its own interesting dean, right? Where there the kiluch it goes up too, right? This is actually a whole thing where if you have a non-Jew, holding a glass of wine, non-mevushal wine, let's take it, and then you pour from a bottle into their glass that has right wine that has some dregs of wine that they've touched, it actually can osir the entire bottle potentially. That's an interesting dean of Yain Nesach, but. I mean, interesting. Maybe a problematic or difficult because you have to deal with that question in mixed company. So, although I guess a lot of people, most wines, at least in the U.S., I can't speak to Israel or Mevushal these days, so we don't deal with that. All right,
Definitely not in Israel.
what was that? Rav Nachum?
Definitely not in Israel.
Oh, not in Israel. Most of them are not Mevushal.
Not really.
Oh, interesting. So, but so different reality here. The just to define a couple terms, right? We're going to have a question of bishul. We're also going to have a question of maflitu mavlia and what the difference is between the two of them. I think the Shulchan Aruch has is kind of a particular definition, and also a question of which showed up in the Beit Yosef, which we're not going to see here as much, but of Shabbat versus Isser v'Heter, right, which might have different dinim. Right, we do hold, and this is kind of just a basic thing in terms of Shabbat, with the exception of things that are what I would call kale bishul. If you have very hot water in a kli sheni on Shabbat, that's not and you put something in it, it's not considered bishul. That's the general rule we have. Is it the exception for things that are like maybe spices that can be kale bishul, but for most things it doesn't count as bishul. And it may be different though for Isser Heter. We may have different rules. So I want to get into that. And the other thing, just to remind us, anybody remember that there's a Tosfot, I think it's in Shabbos in Perek Kira. Yeah, actually I wrote myself a citation here. About why a Kli Sheni might have different rules than a Kli Rishon, even if the temperature is the same. Eitan, what do you have?
think it has to do with sort of we assume the direction that the temperature is going. So for a cliché, the temperature is always going to be going towards the coldness, whereas a Rishon, it's always going to be going towards the hotness, towards heat, I guess. Getting
It's
up.
not. Yeah, it's actually more a rate of cooling, I would say, in the Tosfot than it is.
See.
Yeah, right. The idea is that the Kli Rishon, the Kli itself was heated on the fire, and and the Kli's walls are very hot, and so the cooling isn't happening so fast in a Kli Rishon, and so therefore it still has the ability to cook according to the Tos. This is the Tosfot's theory. It's not the only theory. A Kli Sheni, the walls are cool, and so the water, let's say the liquid or whatever it is inside the Kli Sheni, is cooling down much faster because the Kli is not adding or is not keeping it hot at all. It's dropping in
There's
temperature. And
it's not hot mana, but you don't have additional heat coming in.
exactly.
It's not Mosif.
Yeah, it's not mostly heat or keeping it from cooling off because this is maybe the other question we should deal with. What's the difference between Kli Rishon and a Kli on the fire?
You gave it away in your answer, in your
I did.
question.
I kind of did. I know. I know. It's maybe one of the two types of Kli Rishon. Maybe that's the way I should ask the question, right?
one on the fire and one that's just come off the fire.
Exactly, right? Even though it's come off the fire, we still say it cooks, right? It doesn't have to be. Everyone agrees, right? The simplest case is you have a kli on the fire, with stuff in it. That for sure, there is cooking going on. There's, maflitu mavlia. Um, but kli rishon, that kind of the chiddush, I'd say, of the Gemara about kli rishon is that even when you take it off the fire, it still keeps cooking, right? It's if you have at a certain temperature, right? Of course, right? All of this is, although if anybody remember, I'll ask this a question. Sorry, this is what happens when I'm a little under the weather. I need to ask the questions better. The Rashba, the Tur quotes this. The Rashba had a particular, well, no, the the Tur had a take on the Rashba, I think actually, but the Rashba says something about a Kli Rishon in terms of temperature. What does he say? We should turn back. Let's go back. Let's go to Kufay in the Tur. We should look at this because this is, I think, important. Uh, it's in uh, Bet. It starts Katav HaRashba in the Tur. We should read it again. Eitan, you're up. Go ahead.
Starting at Katav Rashba.
Yes.
Okay. כתב הרשב"א, יש אומרים שאין מפליט אלא חום של כלי ראשון שהוא מבשל, אבל כלי שני וכן עירוי שהוא ככלי שני אינו מפליט. So the Rashba wrote that there are those who say that there is no haflata unless it's a kli rishon, which cooks.
Yes.
But a kli sheni and also irui, which is like a kli sheni, doesn't have haflata.
But one thing just to note, in this, the Rashba is not quoting himself. He's quoting, right, quoting himself. He's not talking, giving his own opinion. He's giving this opinion of these Yeshamrim. These Yeshamrim are equating what two things with each other?
Uh,
Bishul and Plita.
Exactly, right? That's an important point here, which is going to be some of the split. Okay, now we go back to the Rashba,
Right.
the Nehira.
So this is the Rashba's thoughts on this, which is
Exactly.
below Nehira, Sharei Chom Shel Beit Hashchita, V'chom Halev, Achelev Haksalim, Maflit, Shem Pchutim Mikli Sheni. Ela Kol Chom Shal Yedei Ha'esh Maflit, Afilu Ein Hayad Soledet Bo Ad Kan. Right. So he says that this is not so clear to me. He disagrees because you have examples where there's different kind, like the Chom Beit Hashchita, which is like the heat from where you slaughter an animal, and also from the chelev of the ksalim. They have pleta, and they're way less hot than the kli sheni.
Yeah. What assumption is the Rashba operating under here?
I think the assumption is that Kedei Klipa is similar to all other kinds of, like, meaning if it's something is Maflit Kedei Klipa, it's under the same sort of rules as any other kind of pleta.
Good. I think that's one, which we're going to get to. There's another thing he's operating, I think, under is this idea that he just can't believe that temperature isn't the major factor, right? I think he's like, if something is hot, right? If it's hotter than Beit Shlita and Beit Shlita is maflit, then how could this thing not be maflit? Who cares what kli it's in, right? That I think really bothers him. If you have, if you pour 300-degree water, well, you can't do, okay, I guess if it's pressurized. If you pour 211-degree water at 1 atmosphere into a kli sheni, and then you put like a piece of chicken in it, you tell me it's not going to cook? You gotta be kidding me. Right. I think that's what the Rashba, I think that's his thought process here, is like the temperature matters. But he knows that there's a tradition that something that is less than Yad Nichved doesn't cook, at least in some places. And there's a difference between Kli Rishon and Kli Sheni. So now he's going to come up with a new theory, I think, here of what the difference is. So do one more line here, Eitan.
Starting at Ela Kol Chom.
Yeah.
Ela Kol Chom Shal Yedei Ha'esh Maflit, Afilu Ein Hayad Soledet Bo Ad Kan. So, but rather any heat that comes from fire, I mean, I guess like you put something on top of a fire, that causes pleta, even if it's not so hot that your hand recoils from touching it.
Exactly. So what's special about a Kli Rishon on the fire is it doesn't even have to get to Yad Soledet Bo to cook. But the assumption is that if it's off the fire, it doesn't matter maybe what Kli it is. If it is Yad Soledet Bo, right? We haven't really got into is Yad Nichvet and Yad Soledet the same thing. There may be slightly different temperatures, but something hot enough that your hand doesn't like it, let's put it that way, then it doesn't matter what kli it's in. It is maflit. Now we haven't defined what maflit either.
How do you translate al yedei ha'esh? Because normally in Hebrew we would say al yedei ha'esh means that it was caused by fire as
Yes.
opposed to caused by sunlight. But are
Yeah.
you translating it as caused by fire, or are you translating it as that's sha'al ha'esh, that
Yeah.
is
No,
on the
I think you're right. I think al yedei ha'esh means kol chom from a kli rishon, whether or not it's on the esh. I think that's a better translation.
fire? That was caused, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Right, whether or not.
I think it would be Ela kol chom she'al ha'esh would be the that it would be on the fire, but here it's al
Yeah.
yedei ha'esh that it was caused by the fire. So any
As opposed to etzel haish, like the pot next to the medulla or something like that.
Right.
exactly.
Etzel H would be next to the fire. Al Yadea H doesn't mean, it means right, made by fire,
Yeah.
as opposed to like Chame Teveria.
Hmm. Yeah. Or a cliche. In this case, I think it's as opposed to a cliché, right? Where the chom is from the irui, shall we say, and not from the Asia. It wasn't.
Right, not directly from the fire. In other words, right, it's a grama kind of. It's like a knot bar knot. The
Mhm.
fire caused the water to heat. Now the water is in a different pot and it's still hot.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the Rashba here, his idea is what's the difference between a Kli Rishon and Kli Sheni? A Kli Rishon doesn't have to be Yad Soledet. A Kli Sheni does cook, but it has to be Yad Soledet. I think that's what I get out of this quote from the Rashba here.
So what would the Rashba think of our new modern sealed hot plates?
Well, there are sealed hot plates. Like what? Are you talking about? Like just like a
The
plata?
electric, like a plata,
Good. Yes. Well, like if you
is it
remember.
that is that now a klishlishi? In
Oh,
order for us to use that on,
I
it's
think he would call that fire. I think he would call
yeah,
it fire.
ish. So
It's
I
for
think the
Shabbat, it might not be fire, but for our purposes, it's fire.
Yeah. I mean, I think almost everyone would agree that on Shabbat, you can't take an uncooked item and put it on a plata, right? That would be problematic because it gets hot. If the plata gets hot enough, right? If it's a hot, there's some that don't get so hot. The question is whether or not can you do hachzara on a plata to something that was already cooked? Because is it mari? Does it look like bishul or not? And Rav Landis, I know Rav Nachum, you correct me if I'm wrong, has made the argument. He's not just him, right? We saw last year in Shabbos that there achronim would make this argument that a plata, no one cooks something, even though you could cook something on a plata, no one does it. So no one's going to make a mistake when they see you put something on a plata and be like, oh, you're cooking. And so there's no mir ekabishul concerns about that. Which remember, hachsara, that was part of our issue. Something that's already cooked, even though it can't be cooked again,
Right.
we don't want it to look like
That,
bishul.
that's my opinion. But there are I think there are poskim that say, what are you talking about? They argue about cooking. They say cooking. People do cook on a plata all the time because they take a cholent that's 3/4 cooked, put
Mhm.
it on the plata, and then it cooks one more quarter. So that's called cooking. They do cook on it.
So it's funny.
But
I
that
don't. Yeah, I never knew platas were used for that kind of thing.
you can put food that's not fully cooked on a plata and cook it full and fully cook
Yeah,
it.
that's fair. So
Not on. I'm saying Erev Shabbat. In other words, not on Shabbat.
yeah, but
I
people
mean,
will.
not sorry, not on a Wednesday,
Mhm.
but on Erev Shabbat. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
So wait, I just want to get this again clear. I just want to how you read. Elakol chom she'al yedei ha'esh. In other words, you're saying that's another way of saying kli rishon.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's
Saying
what.
any kli rishon maflit afilu ein hayad to let it bow. But a kli sheni there's differences.
Needs to
Yeah,
be
There
Yad
it has to
Soleil.
be yad to let it bow.
exactly. But he is saying that it does cook if you get to Yad Soletipo on a cliché.
Gotcha.
It says Maflit. Do you think the
Oh,
Rashba is still equating like his Yesh Omrim was
Yeah,
Maflit and
yeah,
Bishul, or has
maflit. I
he
think
turned
he's
it?
yeah, good question. I think he said. I mean, I think what we have to say is Maflit is what we actually are concerned with in the world of Yisr V'Heter.
Yeah.
How
exactly.
is Maflit Oser HaKol or not is going to be another question, right?
He wants to distinguish. He wants to
Right.
distinguish
That's
it
why I
from the
said.
laws of Shabbos by
Exactly.
using the word maflit. He's saying, I don't take anything that I say here as far as the laws of Shabbos. I'm talking about maflit.
Yeah, you know, the laws of
Maybe it's
Shabbos.
bishul, maybe it's not bishul. I'm not saying, but it
Yeah,
is maflit.
you know, Inyana Dioma, right? The laws of the cooking on Shabbos come from this week's parsha to some extent, right? But
Echinu asher view.
exactly, yeah, this is the man. Uh, Okay, now let's go to the Shulchan Aruch. Let's see how he paskins, and maybe then
Okay,
if we.
but
Oh yeah,
you,
go ahead.
well, I was gonna say then you're jumping on this little sort of rehashing of Rishon and Klisheni in the Rashba. I'd be curious to extend that to now how what happens is the Tur is going to interpret what the Rashba is saying, and then the Beit Yosef is going to be a little bit annoyed about everybody, basically.
Yeah, well, part of it
But
is
maybe we don't need to review the whole thing.
yeah. There's some debate about the tourist trying to figure out what the Rashba is talking about. He thinks it's a case of Tata Gavar, and he's not clear what Kli he's talking about. Like that's the interesting thing about the tour. I think the Bach thinks he's talking about Kli Sheni. And it drives there's Rashba and the tour's interpretation drives everybody kind of up the wall. And what I'm really interested
Yeah,
in right now is the bottom line halacha, and how does the
good.
Shulchan Aruch paskin, how does the Ramah paskin, and we shall see. The Ramah, if I remember, it doesn't say anything in particular about this, so it's so let's read that. Ori, go ahead and read
I'm gonna do it.
Steve Bet in the Shulchan Aruch.
Great. חום של כלי ראשון שהיד סולדת בו, מבשל ואוסר כולו. So the heat of a kli rishon that is also, hot to the touch, or burning hot to the touch. Mivashel v'oser, it cooks, and oser kulo, it makes the entire piece asur,
Mhm.
like flavor transfer to the whole piece. Aval chom shel kli sheni eino mivashel, but the heat of a kli sheni doesn't cook. V'yesh omrim shegam ken eino maflit, so he does make a difference here. V'lo mavliah. And there are those who say that the cliché doesn't even maflit a little bit or reabsorb any flavor. But it sounds like he didn't want to go that far in his first statement. He just wanted to say Eno mivashel voser kulo.
Uh, wait,
Read on. Just read on. He's going to say the other
I'm going to keep
side.
going. Yeah. ויש אומרים דמכל מקום הוא מפליט ומבליע ואוסר כדי קליפה. And there are those who say cliché is maflit ומבליע and is going to oser, but just a klipa. וראוי לחוש ולהיזהר בדבר לכתחילה, אבל בדיעבד מותר. So לכתחילה, we're not going to let that kind of flavor transfer happen, even if it's just a klipa. But b'diavad, if it happened, b'diavad mutar, below klipa uvahadacha be'alma sagi. You could even just rinse it off
yeah,
without having to kind of cut anything off.
good. All right, so what did the Shulchan Aruch just decide? Everyone, Kli Rishon. Well, first off, yeah, Kli Rishon. Let's go back over this. Kli Rishon. What, according to him, are the parameters for it to be mivashel?
Yad soledet bo.
And what
To
does
be oser kulo, yeah.
yeah, good. That was
Wait,
my next question. What does mevashel
yeah,
mean? It means oser kulo. I think that's what he means. But vet
And if
oser.
it's
that's what I
not yet,
thought.
so let it go.
Great question. It's not clear. He
He
doesn't
didn't
tell us.
go into all the intermediate cases.
Right.
There's also the question of a cliché that is Yad Soledet Bo,
Well,
which you mentioned in the Rashba.
yeah, I think good. Well, let's talk about that in a second. I think there's so much to break down in this piece in the Shulchan Aruch here. But he doesn't mention what happens in a Kli Rishon that's Eino Yad Soledet Bo. And then what is he? A Kli Sheni, does he give us temperature here?
No, so he's basically saying either way, no matter what the heat, we have a cliché standard.
That's my guess, right? A very close reading of the Shulchan Aruch seems to be Cleve Shani. It doesn't matter how hot it is.
No, 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 no.
Well,
I
okay,
don't
yes,
think so.
yes. Okay, I mean,
I don't agree.
I know, Rav
I
Nachman.
think I
I,
think that he's saying the first rule is you need to be Yad for anything to be a problem.
yeah,
That's the first rule. And that's the assumption. Anything less than Yad no matter where it is, not a problem. And then he's saying in Klirisha, so in Klisheni, it's not, even if it's Yad it's not Mevashel, but maybe it does something.
good. Oh, good. Okay, that's where I was going to go anyway. So I feel like
Okay.
um, yeah. So he says Klisheni, he doesn't give a temperature, but yeah, I think we can assume that if it's not Yad Soledetbo, that it doesn't do anything. And then he brings the machloket and he says lechatchila we should be machmir to say krei klipa, but b'diavad hadacha works. Okay, so he kind of rules against the Rashba b'diavad, but for the Rashba lechatchila. So he thinks me'akar hadin, I guess you would say the Rashba is wrong, but we should be have a choshesh to the Rashba. I would call it something like that, or at least an understanding of the Rashba. Okay. Any questions about that? Anything we should say differently?
Why? What I didn't understand is why B'diavad. I guess it sort of makes the point about Ikar Adin again. He's not even looking for, a klipa scrape.
Well, he's looking for it. Like what happens if you didn't do it or you couldn't do it or something like that. That's the b'diavad situation.
Ah, I see. B'diavad meaning you can't do even the klipa now, but you.
Yeah, we'll see
So
that.
you're saying your lechatchila wasn't about what you should cook. It's that lechatchila you should scrape off a klipa.
Yeah, lechatchila you just take a klipa off, and if you didn't do it or you can't do it, we'll see that like will come out with when we get to Tata Gavar and Gimel, right? The whole question of right if I have a hot liquid and I drop some not hot liquid and go the other way. I have a cold liquid and I have a hot piece of pork or chalev or whatever it is, that falls into my soup, my liquid, and I remove the chalev or from it and right per the rules of Tata Gavar then because that was a cold interaction, but you need Kidei Klipa. And so wait a second, but how do you do Kidei Klipa on the soup? And that's going to be a case where you can't do Kidei Klipa, for instance. Okay.
And then your b'diavad kicks in.
Yes. So, but ideally, of course, you want to, right? If you drop, a piece of pork into your, well, that's it. What's a better? Not even drop. You have a cliche that's very hot, and you have some sort of, do hot, just make it easy. You have a hot isur that falls into there. Then you can't do the klipa, then fine. But if it goes the other way, what if you have a hot heter that falls into a hot isur in a klisheni? You should do klipa on it.
From the piece.
Yeah. Now I gotta say the how are we doing on time? Let's decide how we want to do this. The achronim, I don't know if they feel that way necessarily. So I'm gonna jump us in the middle of the Taz here. Uh, anyone I'm trying to think like he's got a K near Eloniat dati biur devarav. Everyone, I don't know if you see that, and then he's got viod semizeh. In my version, it happens to be where the lines get long, but in the Taz. Um, let's see, is there another place I can kind of point this to
Well,
help?
we can you really
The last line.
the Farish Divrei Tur?
No. It's beyond that. It says "Ken yireh only at dati biur devarav veyotzeh mizeh."
I'm looking in Al HaTorah, so I'm still trying to find it here.
Yeah, I've got it in Alator.
So, does that mean you found it, Max?
Yeah.
Is it Dalid in Al HaTorah?
Yeah.
Ah,
Towards
here.
the end.
Kach nirali, not Ken nirali.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. Okay, for Kach, Ken. Yeah.
And my print is actually written out.
Oh, that's fair. That's
Kach
maybe
yeah, I found it.
maybe it's written in mine. I don't I don't can't tell the nun from the Chaf very well. It could be. No, it's not. It's not. It's a Russian thing. So, all right, Max, go ahead. Viot semizeh.
ויוצא מזה, דאף בכלי שני שיצא lettuce בו, אוסר כולו. Okay, so Taz is holding that klisheni with Yad Soledet, everything's aser. כמו שכתב בשם רש"ל, וכן פירש בית יוסף דברי התור במסקנה, כמו שכתב, ואם הוא חם שהיד נכבס בו, אז אוסר, כמו מבושל. דהיינו אפילו בכלי שני, דהיינו אפילו בכלי שני. Okay, so he's reading that through that Beis Yosef.
Yeah.
Okay. ולפי זה, כל החומרות שנזכרו בסימן צדי ד' מעניין בן יומו, הווה גם כן בכלי שני, ולא כמו שכתב רמה שם, ריש הסימן, עיין שם, איסור והתר, אם הכף בן יומו, דהיינו ששימשו בו תוך מאיס לאיס, בכלי ראשון. So this has to mean if this is how we're holding, then the chumras about a ben yomo utensil or pot in the a few weeks ago Or no, we
It's
haven't
not
seen that.
approved.
We haven't seen that yet.
We haven't done that yet.
Yeah,
Basar
we haven't seen that.
b'chalav.
Which is the case of okay. So those chumros about Ben Yomo would have to be taking place in a kli sheni.
Oh, not it would have to be. They would even apply if it was a klisheni, right? Even if you have a klisheni that
Oh, that's Yatzel Espo.
has a hot interaction,
Uh-huh.
that would, you put, here he's talking about kaf, but like you put, some hot stuff into a klisheni, and the klisheni has been yoma been used for. Let's make it isur instead of make it basar b'chalav. Used for isur, that would be the make it oser kulo according to this. So, according to this opinion of the Rashal, which he hasn't given his, I don't think actually. He's going to give that in a second.
Okay.
Not like the Beit Yosef, not like, well, like maybe like the Beit Yosef, but not like the Shulchan Aruch bottom line where it's Kidei Klipa at best. Here he's saying it's Oser.
Kulo.
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. U'inyan masa yesh lisok lechumra kedas rashal. Bifrat shator sfira legam kein hachi rak b'makom hefsed gadol.
But keep
So,
going.
okay.
Well,
Okay. ודבר חשוב יש לסמוך על בית יוסף בסימן צדיחס ורמה בסעיף ג' כאן להקל בדיעבד בכלי שני דאינו מפליט ומבליע כלל אפילו שהיה צוללת בו.
good.
Okay, so best to be machmir lechatchila, but b'diavad, because it's eino maflit umavliya, we can be mekil. Afilu, I don't know if afilu yatzel, so yeah, even if there's actual serious heat emanating from the klisheni. The imein hayatzoleres bo ein sarich rak hadacha kach nireh, is it kach or ken nireh le'anus daiti. So, but if it's klisheni and no yatzoleres bo, then you just need to do hadacha.
Yes. So he's gotten rid of now the idea of klipa in klisheni.
Right.
And lechatchila klisheni is oser kulo. And b'diavad, not even just b'diavad. There's a difference between b'diavad and hefsed merubah. This is hefsed merubah, which is
Yeah.
a stronger, stricter category than just b'diavad. There he says, then we can rely on the Beit Yosef, who says hadacha. Very different psak. So,
Yeah.
But this is I just Rav Nachum could speak this better than I, but is we send all of you out to someone calls you on Friday afternoon and they're cooking for Shabbos and a mistake happens and it's like it happens in a klisheni. How lenient can you be? Well, it depends. Like, are there 25 people coming for Shabbos and you spent a bunch on this really nice piece of, whatever it is, and you're like, oh, just rinse it off? Or is it the kind of case where it's not hefsed merubeh and it's not davar chashuv, and you're like, yeah, I'm sorry, it's asur kulo.
It's interesting though. He's gotten rid of the category of klipa.
Exactly. There's no klipa in this.
Either you're more mekel or more machmir, but there's no the middle category.
Yeah.
This is an important rule, which is you can't necessarily paskin from what you see in the Shulchan Aruch. You got to see also the Achronim.
Yes.
And the Rashal tends to be it tends to be machmir, and we tend to follow the Rashal a lot of times.
Yeah. He kind of wins in that sense of the Taz in particular likes to quote the Rashal, and I don't know if this is from the Yamshel Shlomo or from one of his other books, but it's the Yamshel Shlomo that he says that you should be machmer. Yeah, actually, I'm going to sign Rav Nachum. Can I assign you something while we're learning this?
Yeah,
I have a note in my Shulchan Aruch that says Ayin Chochmat Adam Nun Ted Vav. And
all right, I'll go look for it.
I meant to look at that, and I didn't get a chance to, and so I'm curious. And since you're a descendant, we should have you be the one to take a look at the Chochmat Adam. All right, do a little bit more because there's a very interesting, important piece in the Taz here too.
Okay. Just keep going the same.
Yeah, same Taz.
Can I, before you do it, what's the nafkamina with the Shulchan Aruch is that if it's not hefsed merubeh,
so two things.
then I'm going to be machmir even b'diavad?
Yeah, so the Shulchan Aruch says it's just a lechatchila b'diavad, and lechatchila in klisheni krei klipa b'diavad hadacha. The Taz says the two categories are oser kulo or asur kulo or hadacha, and it's not based on lechatchila b'diavad, but rather hefsed merubah or not hefsed merubah, right? Which hefsed
Which
merubah.
means that the case is non-hefsed merubah, even b'diavad, he's not going to be. First of all, you can't do klipa or hadacha, but it's basically asur.
Exactly.
And it's
Yeah.
asur, but it's basically asur because of a big chumrah they're making here. Because if it weren't a big chumrah, how could they be permitted even after rinsing, right? It would be, it's like it's asur, and that's it.
Good. Yeah, this is, it's always an admission when they allow something like that. It's an admission that Beikar Hadin, we actually think that maybe this is true, or at least I wouldn't even say that. I would say there's a very strong opinion here in the Shulchan Aruch, the Beit Yosef, right? Even if we disagree with the Beit Yosef, it's like he holds that opinion, so it's hard to say you can never follow it, right? It's just we're only going to limit that to very special cases.
And does it matter if it's Yad Soledet or not, or this is the same as the Shulchan Aruch? Basically, we only are talking about Klisheni Yad Soledet.
Yes, we're talking about cliche Yad Soledet, I think.
We're never talking about less than that.
Yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't seem to be. So the only place where I really saw it be less was the tour because the Rashba mentioned the Beit Shchita, so he says,
Right.
well, maybe he, the Rashba, maybe it was the Rashba himself. He says no, the Rashba himself he has a suggestion that heat that in a klisheni even less than Yad Soledet Bo or Yad Nichvet Bo, I can't remember which one.
I think that was the way that the tour wanted to read the Rashba to make it make sense in the end. No?
I think it was the Rashba himself, the language of the Rashba himself. So um, I don't I don't have it. This was in the, if I remember correctly, that Rashba was in the Torah by Takatsar.
Oh, it was in the Beit Yosef, right?
Yeah. So yeah, because the Ad Khan is after that. So yeah, that's the Rashba's actual opinion. Good. This is confusing stuff, and this is why we need to be very careful with it. It's not so
Yeah, so
obvious.
the Chai Adam, the Chochmas Adam says he says Bidyev. You were asking Bidyev Hesed Meruba. Remember you were mentioning that? He says Bidyev, which is in a sense you said it's a different category from Hesed Meruba, but
Mhm.
is it more lenient or more? He says Bidyev actually mutter. Ve'ein tzarich afilu klipa b'makom hefsed. B'di'evet b'makom hefsed. B'di'evet is always b'di'evet, right? Okay, so I take it back. He's so he says the same thing. So far, he says the same thing. Sorry,
Okay.
now I read it again. Ein tzarich afilu klipa. That's just the Shulchan Aruch. I'll keep reading and let you guys go.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. So, good. Max, keep going with this Taz here.
Okay, ועיין עוד במה שכתבתי בסימן צרי ד' סעיף י"ד בשם רש"ל, דבדבר שהוא אב כמו חתיכת בשר רותח שדינו ככלי ראשון, ככלי ראשון ממש, ומה שכתבתי עליו שם.
Mhm.
So there's another rashal when you have something like really thick, like a piece of meat that
Yeah.
is itself considered like a kli rishon,
Exactly. Yes.
meaning that
Sizzling.
right, meaning but off a flame, we're saying,
Exactly.
like on
Yeah.
a plate or something. Yeah.
Mhm. So, you have a piece of meat and you drop something on it and it's a sizzling piece of meat. That's considered kli rishon heat. Interesting. And
Yeah.
we have to keep going back to Shabbos. There's a fascinating Rav Moshe about putting ketchup on a very hot piece of meat on Shabbos. And he actually permits it because at the end of the day, they're like, well, ketchup's a liquid. You can't reheat liquids. And if this is actually a good review. If you remember, the Ramah permits the reheating of liquids or the returning liquids on Shabbos onto the fire if they haven't cooled down to room temperature. And Rav Moshe he's not the only one, feels strongly that the Ramah thinks that that actually there's no bishul. He follows the Rambam. There's no bishul, a hard bishul with liquids also, and that we're just machmir about it, and so he allows it with the ketchup too for that reason. Rav Moshe has this pretty consistently in his chuvot
That would also be like bread and soup.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Aruch HaShulchan, I saw this has an interesting thing about bread and soup too, where he thinks I'm very nervous about this, but he thinks your intention isn't to cook the bread in the soup. But I think there's a Mishnah that goes against that if I remember correctly. But anyway, maybe he justifies it there. So
But in
um,
the cliché, there's really no re way you'd be cooking the bread
good for Shabbos purposes. Yeah,
for Shabbos purposes.
yeah. So um, good. Let's what do I want to do from here? I wanted to do the next I want to do some of this. Um oh yeah,
So just to step back for a second. So in that case, by the way, with the bread and the soup, just bringing it back to where we are here, is sort of a heter. If you had like a Hawaiian roll or some other dairy bread that you grabbed instead of your challah and you dumped it in your soup, that wouldn't be haflata bulat. It would be you just pick up the roll, toss it, but your soup would still be mutar, correct?
um B'diavad maybe have said Meruba, right? Depending on how you want to look at it. How hot, if you're assuming your soup is hot still. We'll get into, by the way, dairy bread. That'll be a whole nother category we have to
I
get in.
mean, dairy bread is a different no-no, but I'm just saying, that still nonetheless it exists. So
There are cases where you're permitted to have dairy bread,
if it's shaped differently, yeah, I understand.
and
But
small, if it's a single portion, so forth. So yeah, there are ways. We'll get into that when we get into Basar B'chalav. One other thing I just wanted to see.
Well, here's what he says. He
Hey,
he,
go
he
ahead.
says that an interesting case he brings is that if you want to get the feathers off of a chicken
Yes.
easily, you have to put it in hot water.
Mhm.
But if you do that before you salted it, then you're cooking without salting, and that's a problem. So he says, so therefore, if it's a klisheni, even if it's yatzaletipo, you could put a chicken in to the hot water in a klisheni, sheyatzaletipo, to help you take off the feathers, even though really we say klisheni does cook. But he's
Yes.
but I think it's kind of like only the tzarech Shabbos or the tzarech gadol.
Mhm. But uh,
It's
yeah,
Atchila Asur. He says it's Atchila Asur. He says Aval Kavod Shabbos or Orchim. But then he starts talking about another case, which is meat that's frozen, and you want to defrost it quickly. So you want to put it in hot water, but you can't put it in Kli Rishon. So if you put it in Kli Sheni, he also lets you do that, but also again only for Tzarech Gadol. So as he
interesting.
said, I was saying you could rely on the fact that it doesn't cook even if it's Yad Soledetpo. If it's and you can do Lechatchila if it's a Tzarech Gadol.
So um,
I don't know. I don't know
Th-
why
Those
you wanted that, but
I don't know why I wanted that either.
that sort of gadol does not, those iterative cases do not sound quite Hefsed Meruba level. They sound a lot less. They sound like so
no, it's like he says you have a lot of guests coming. It's not a Hefsed Meruba, right? It's a different kind of
a
concept.
little
A lot
lower.
of
Yeah.
guests are coming, and but I think it's pretty much the same concept. I think in the end, if you have guests coming for Shabbos and you need to make meat for Shabbos, that's kind of like a Hefsed Meruba because how else are you going to do it? You're going to have to go buy from the neighbor his meat, and he's going to charge you a lot because then he's going to be out of meat. I don't know. In other words, you always have an alternative, and the alternative is always to spend a lot of money and somehow get it.
So, I'm curious why I had that. Actually, that means that I want to do the part of the shach now, though, because that actually gets into the whole Irui question, which we haven't answered yet, right? We've only really answered the Irui he does deal with in Basar B'chalav, but let's look at shach hey since we're at it. We'll look at not. I don't think we'll do the whole thing, but
See,
we'll.
the question about Irui is you're saying is Irui nifsach kiluach or not nifsach kiluach? But it depends on whether you're being machmir on Irui or being mekel on Irui. It gets complicated because there's four possibilities.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. So, right, because if you think Irui is Kikli Rishon, is it Irui where it's a continuous, pour or a
right?
non-continuous pour? And if you're being
And if you
made,
think it's not like Kli Rishon, then again you could ask the same question.
yes, exactly. So, let's look a little bit about Irui. Let's do the Shach and Hay, since this would be a good thing. This is where again the Shulchan Aruch said we should lechatchila if you have a Yad Soletipo Klisheni, then you should take Kedei Klipa lechatchila. So that was his thing. Let's see who just read. Max, did you just read? Yeah, you just read. Eitan, you've read. Ori, do you want to read?
Yeah.
They're putting those in putting class because you read a lot in class this week. So
the whole class. וראוי לחוש להיזהר בדבר לכתחילה. פירוש אפילו הוא דבר שדרכו להדיחו אחר כך. Even this means something that you usually rinse off afterwards.
mhm.
דאז
Why
מותר
is that? Why is
להניחו.
that relevant? Why is that relevant?
Because you're automatically going to do Ikar Hadin at the end of the day. That's
Right. Exactly. Exactly. In other words, that's the din. Really, is that well? Is it ikar din? Right. It's not according to the chum. It's the kula b'di'evid. Right.
yeah.
So why is it important that it's something that I would have done it right away?
Good. Well, because this is like, well, what if it's something that I naturally would already do? The thing that would be the really Ikar, if the Avad, Ikar Adin is that it needs Hadacha, and I was gonna do Hadacha already, then I would already naturally, follow the Deen that I really needed to do. So do I really need to do Klipa? And he says, no, even there you need to do Klipa. So
Because remember, the Shulchan Aruch says b'di'evid you could just do hadacha. So I could say like this: Oh, I'm going to do hadacha anyway, so I'll just do it, and then I'll do hadacha.
yeah,
Because anyway, I was going to do hadacha.
exactly. All right.
דאז מותר להניחו על גבי איסור צונן.
Yeah, this is a rule. We'll get this right when you have two isurim touching each other. If they're not completely, there has to be some liquid, but that all the hadacha is all you need. But you're not allowed to lechatchila put them touching each other unless it's something that you normally would wash off anyway. Otherwise, you may forget to wash it off, right? And then you may cook with it and cause all sorts of problems. So,
Okay, כדי לעיל, ריש סמך, the beginning of Sif Tzarich
yeah,
Aleph.
yeah,
מכל מקום,
Siman Tzadi Aleph. Yeah, we're
yeah,
gonna do
Reish Siman.
mention.
So that's when we'll get to that whole issue about the putting things down and rinsing them.
Mm.
מכל מקום, הכה יש להיזהר לכתחילה בדבר זה. But in any event, this is a place where we should be לכתחילה נזהר. ובספרי הערכתי בדיני עירוי וקלישני, וכאן אכתוב בתכלית הקיצור מה שנוגע בשרשי הדין. So I wrote about it in extent in my book, but here I'll just go to the tachlis. דעת רשב"ם שהביאו התוספות, רשב"ם?
Tosafot Perek Dam Chatat.
פרק דם חטאת ופרק קירה והראש והר"ן לשם ומרדכי
I think it's Hagot Ashri.
הגאות אושרי סוף עבודת כוכבים וספר התרומה דעירוי ככלי שני ואינו מבשל וכן אינו מפליט ומבליע כאחד כמו כלי שני.
If
Good.
in other words, Kli Rishon is like Irui is like Klisheni.
Exactly. Yes, that's
And
exactly
that's the first opinion. Now he's going to read the second opinion.
right. Now in Rabbeinu Tam.
What Irui case is this?
This is from a Kli Rishon, right? Irui Kli Rishon is like Kli Sheni. That's the
Which means a case where you poured and stopped pouring?
well, good. That's an interesting question. He doesn't say so far. So he sounds
I'm just explain to me what Irui means in general in this case.
it's not I was under the impression, but maybe I'm wrong, and I remember where I saw this that it has to be unless that there's Irui is like a pour where it's no longer connected to the Kli Rishon when it hits the Kli Sheni. But maybe that's not true.
Okay, so it's something. ודעת רבינו תם שהביאו כל הנח פוסקים לשם דאירי מבשל כדי קליפה כמו כלי ראשון. So they brought the other opinion from Rabbeinu Tam that Irui does cook at least כדי קליפה like כלי ראשון. ומוכח דעת הרשב"ם דמכל מקום עירוי מבליע כדי קליפה כגון אם אירה איסור רותח על ההתר או חלב על גבי בשר אוסר כדי קליפה. So if what's a good way to translate ira though in this case?
Pour.
Even in the case of ira isur rotech al heter?
Yeah. You have like hot.
It pours. So it's like icy. So it's like in the air and not in the kli or whatever. It's in the new kli, but it's hitting the object directly as opposed
Mhm.
to coming from below. Okay. Oh,
Wait,
that
so
is
wait a
helpful.
second. Let me just clarify. I think what we're saying here is that when the Rashba says it's like klisheni, but now we're saying the Rashbam says that, but now he's saying, but really it does. He even admits that it cooks a little bit.
Exactly. We still get plata there, and
So now we're at the state where the Rabbeinu Tam is holding that it's mivashel
Like kli rishon. Kedei klipa.
kedei
he's
klipa,
yeah, both of them are
and the
connected.
Rashba is not kedei klipa, but it's mavliya. Well, it's also kedei klipa, so there's no
It's the same
argument.
thing. I think mevashel kedei klipa is very similar to saying
I,
mavlia or
Mavliya kedei
mafli.
klipa.
but
Yeah, it's the
It
same.
almost comes out that there's no argument anymore, right? One says it's mivasho kedei klipa, one says
oh
it's
no, I think the argument is there's a Tosfot that thinks the Rashbam thinks it doesn't isn't Kedei Klipa, and then the Rabbeinu Tam thinks not only does he think it's Kedei Klipa, he thinks actually the Rashbam thinks it's Kedei Klipa.
he thinks the Rashbam agrees with him. No, it's not that the Rashbam really does
Yeah,
agree with him, but he thinks he does. Okay,
this is like a different version of the Rashbam than the first Lashon that he gave.
okay, sounds
But
good. I
also, I
go with
think
that.
they're explaining the case, which is helpful. Kegon im ira isur rotech ala heter o chalev al gabe basar. So we're pouring it right onto the thing. Oser kedei klipa. So in that pour, it's oser kedei klipa, just the part that it hit,
Yeah.
if I understand correctly. Ela de'eno maflitu mavlia ke'echad. But it doesn't, send flavor and absorb flavor as one.
You don't have two-way transfer going.
Exactly, two-way transfer. ולקח מותר להראות על התרנגולת למולגה.
Well, God,
That's what
yeah.
I was describing
מולגה,
about taking the feather,
the
softening up the
feathers.
skin to get the feathers out.
Mhm.
The molgo, the molga.
Molga, I got it. I see. So to pour on it for the purpose of feathering it.
Yes,
Uh,
defeathering. Is that the right word? I don't
well, I
know.
don't know what you would call it. Yeah. To defeather. וגם הוא חפתת הרשב"ם דכלי שני אינו מבליע כלל, אפילו כדי קליפה. And also the Rashbam is being explained that klisheni doesn't absorb at all, even a klipa.
Mhm.
So klisheni being here weaker than that Irui case.
Exactly.
Well, notice that we're distinguishing between, let's say you have milk and meat in a cup and you pour hot water on it. That's one case. And there's another case where you pour hot milk on meat.
Exactly. Yes.
In other words, if you have milk and meat in a cup and you pour hot water on it, so there's nothing happened. There, it's where can we make it? But if you pour actually the hot milk on meat, then it's gonna be usher, says the
Yes.
Rashbam.
So that's why
this
you're allowed.
version of the Rashbam.
That's
Yeah.
why you're allowed to, right? Just to make sure that that's clear. That's why you're allowed to pour hot water on a bird and to make the feathers easy to take out because, right, we're not worried that the water pouring on the bird will cause the dam inside the bird to be cooked inside the bird and it will become a dam bird. But if the water, let's say, was Isur water, I don't know, it had like pork in it or something like that, and then you poured that on the bird, it would be Oser Kedei Klipa.
It's a more direct heat.
Yeah. So
The actual
more
isser,
to
the actual isser that you're pouring is hot as a right.
Yeah. It's a Kli Rishon travel. Like it's a traveling Kli Rishon for that second. And therefore
Yeah.
where it hits, it's getting Kli Rishon power. ודעת רבינו תם שהביאו גם כל הנח פוסקים דלאל מוכח לסביר לי דעירוי כמו שאינו מבשל בכולו, כך אינו מבליע בכולו. So Irui is like not cooking the whole thing, and therefore also not spreading flavor to the whole thing.
Yeah.
ודלא כמהרש"ל בתשובות סימן ס"ב כתב דלרבנו תם שהביא הראש מבליע בכולו. And not like the way the Marshal brings Rabbeinu Tam, right?
Exactly. Which
And the
seems
Rosh, he says it more like Mavliya Bikulo. What, for the Yerui case also?
yeah.
Mm.
I'm trying to think about, yeah, let's do a little bit more because we'll get eventually to his, how does he actually hold? But
Do you want me to skip or just keep going?
um, yeah, actually, here
Tamua.
I want to jump just because of time.
Mhm.
Ubevach b'siman zeh machmir bioter.
Mhm.
How much skip?
How far are we going?
A lot. It's like
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
halfway in. I'm trying to think if I can find a good
4 lines up in my edition.
Ubabach. Yeah, I found it.
yeah. So
This is This is
okay.
Sograim Samach Gimel Sif Gimel.
Oh, okay. Mine doesn't have Sograim in it, so it's a um
ובבח בסימן זה מחמיר ביותר דכלי שני מפליט ומבליע כאחד ואוסר כולו והוא תמוה. So the Bach goes as far enough to say kli sheni would completely transfer flavors both directions and make the whole thing asur. And that is strange, questionable. וענן קיימלן לחומרה דירוי דכלי ראשון מבשל כדקליפה. So I, or we, hold that we would do that chomer just for irui of kli rishon, that it's mevashel just kli klipa, v'hilkach le'inyan Shabbat uvasar b'chalav asur. So that would be for Shabbat law also, and even for milk and meat.
yes.
Again, probably pouring hot milk on a piece of meat in that case.
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
And now he's going to talk about
Yes.
Nifsach Kiluach.
Yes, here we go. This is what I wanted.
Vafilu be'irui shenifsaka kaluach mavlia. So what about in the case where we're pouring and we stop the pour?
So wait a second. So up till now we were talking about not Nifsach Kiluach.
Yeah. So
if it's not Nifsach Kiluach, so it's Kedei Klipa.
Mhm.
And it's Aser right, Aser Kedei Klipa. And the one and the box who said it was Ol Kulo, that was also no Nifsach Kiluach.
Yeah, that was a continuous pour.
That was a continuous pour. Now we're talking about a broken up
what the nifsak kaluach is, because just to picture this, it's like the pour is still attached to the original.
It's not attached. It's like you kind of go like this, and some comes out. There's an air gap between the kli rishon and the liquid. So
you pour a tea kettle. You pour a tea kettle, and then you stop. You turn it the other way, and then the water hits.
Yeah.
So there'd be
pretty hard to do it. It's pretty hard to do such a thing.
Well, a little splash would be usually disconnected.
Exactly. It would have to be a small amount of water.
Exactly. I think it's the splash that's what they're thinking of here. Is like,
or you'd have to be very far above the pot. If you're like 3 floors above and you're pouring, you could get a lot.
All right. Vafilu b'yirush nifsaka kiluach mavlia. It would still transfer flavor. Miha
kedei klipa.
Kedei klipa l'kulei alma.
Wait, so wait a second. So now he's saying it's not mevashel, but it's mavlia.
Exactly.
So that would be by the chicken. Let's think of our case by the chicken. The chicken would be fine. If it would be fine if you did nifsach, but if you did a continuous pour on the chicken, it would be aser.
Exactly.
What, the feather one?
Yeah, because
if you're trying to do the feather one, then if you did a continuous pour, it would be like cooking kedei klipa both ways, so it would aser. But it would go in and out. The blood would go in and out, so it would aser.
But didn't he just say that was okay, and he was talking about an irui?
No, that was what he's saying with the Rashbam. The interpretation of the Rashbam there would say that was okay. But I just
in the Shach's opinion, though, you want to do it disconnected.
Yeah. He does happen to say, right? I know, granted, two things. One, he does say kaimal on the chumrah. That he may mean there that this is a chumrah we take, but like maybe in a Hefsed Meruba, I'm willing to be lenient about this. The other, and this is okay. So what do you do? Well, the
Chai Adam said it klisheni.
Exactly. That's exactly where I wanted to go with it. You can put it in a klisheni instead of doing Iri Kli Rishon and do it that way potentially. So, okay. Mocha Perik Ketzad Solin Ve'afagav Nivre Harav Nira De'imi Ra Mikli Rishon Ala Tarnagol Lemoga V'nifsacha Kiloch Ein Tzarich Afilu Klipa Hayim Mishum De'ino Maflit Mavlia Kechad Aval Mikom Makom Mavlia. So maybe he does think actually, as long as the Nifsaka Kiluach, it would work. The Lamoga, right? But if you were pouring something aser, that's exactly what we said. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what we said.
Yeah. Um, but all right, good. I think that's. I don't know if we need to keep going in the shach here or not. What I want to do just for our last few minutes, I want to read through Seif Gimel because this is an important topic. But this is Tata Gavar Ila Gavar. We don't pass me Ila Gavar, but so. Um, so here we go. I'll read a little bit in Gimel. Nafal isur cham latoch heter cham, dekli rishon, o afilu isur sonen latoch heter cham. All right, so you have the heter, or not the heter, the thing on the it's actually it's a yeah. So you have a heter cham on the bottom, kli rishon kind of heat, and you have an isur whether cham or tsonen falls onto it into it. Hakol asur. Everything becomes asur. De tata gavar al helyon umechamamo ad shemafli patachton. All right. And he's going to say that case, that's the less obvious case. Ve'ein tzarich lomar deheter tzonen letoch isur cham shakol asur, right? And I mean, all the more so, I don't even need to say that if you have, it's the heter coming from above and the isur that's on the bottom, which is hot, that makes everything asur. So, in this, or are you coming in from another? Yes. So we have this idea that tata'a gavar, that the bottom thing's temperature is really what determines is it an interaction that is oser completely. Ve'ein tzarich lomar teheter tzonen letoch isur cham. Okay, hakol aser. Aval im ha'elyon cham ve'atachton tzonen eino oser ele kedei klipa afilu im ha'elyon hacham isur. Right. So if, however, the bottom thing is cold and the top thing is hot, whether it's an isur, whether it's a heter, then it's oser kedei klipa and not oser kulo. Right. That's the basic rule. Anybody, by the way, remember whose opinion that is? In the Gemara, did you see that?
Shmuel, that's true.
Yeah. Maybe it's worth saying a funny thing. Normally, who do we rule like in a debate between Rav and Shmuel in Isure?
Like Rav, usually.
Yeah, we usually rule like Rav. There's a Breita that, if I remember correctly, that supports Shmuel, and that's the reason we rule like Shmuel. So we're really not ruling like Shmuel against Rav and Isure. Okay. Haga. וכל זה לא מראה אלא בחום כלי ראשון, כגון מיד שסירה מן האש מניחו על ההיתר. Alright. אבל אם כבר מונח בכלי שני, ואחר כך מניח ההיתר אצלו או עליו, אין אוסר כלל, דכלי שני אין אוסר כמו שנתבהר. Alright. He says this whole thing is only about kli rishon, right? Because if the thing is already in a kli sheni, and then you put the heter next to it or on it, right? Even though it's hot, that's not oser at all, according to the Ramah, because kli sheni is not oser. We can come back to that a little bit next week. But Kemosh Nitbar, like I will explain, ve'im hanicham ze etzel zeh. All right, so what about if they are if they're both hot but they're next to, or if they're next to each other instead of one on top of each other? Im shnehem chamim, both are hot, michom kli rishon, from a kli rishon, kol asur. Ve'im ha'echad sonen ha'heter tzarich klipa b'makom shenaga. So this is not a top-bottom, but a side-by-side interaction. There, if one of them is cold and one is hot, he says you need kedei klipa. Isur shenicho b'kli heter. All right, now what if you put an isur in a kli heter, ola hefech, or you put a heter in a kli isur? Amrinan be gam ken din tata gavar, kamo b'shtei chatichot. Then it's the same as if it were two pieces of food. All right, and therefore, right, if it's a cold kli, like it's a cold kli isur, and you put a heter into it, a hot heter, what's the din then? Just asking for the group.
Can you say it one more time?
Yeah, you have a cold kli, isur kli, ben yomo, right? Isur kli was, my non-Jewish friend used the kli, accidentally dropped it off at my house. I didn't realize it, and then I put my hot, piece of meat into that kli. What's the rule?
It's Asur.
K'nei klipa,
But
right? 'Cause it's tata gavar.
right. Asur kedei klipa because it's tata gavar.
Exactly.
Right.
So, But all right, the chatach basar besakin cholevet. That's a whole nother story we won't get into. Asur le'arot mikli sheyesh bo shuman kasher. Oh yeah, this is a nice little thing too at the end here. You can't pour from a kli that has kosher fat in it into a lener dolek sheyesh bo chelev or shuman isur that has this is the thing going upwards now. So you have a light, a fire that's burning Easter oil, Easter in terms of you can't eat it, you can burn it. And you can't pour from your, kli with kosher oil in it or kosher fat into that kli. That's how the Rama ends there. Rav Nachum, you look like you want to say something.
Wait, and this is because not nifsak kiluach, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
going, isn't this the, it's because it's going back up.
exactly. So, although it's interesting, look at the Shach. He says in Yud Aleph, he says Asur le'arotz v'chulei mishum da hevel ole me'aner lamala, and so maybe it doesn't have to do with the kiloch. It's about the kind of I don't know if the hevel is the zaya there or you know or maybe you think it's through the kiloch, but he doesn't seem to say that. So
Uh-huh. Where which shach? Sorry,
Yud Aleph,
Mishum de Hevel. So that would be even if it's not, even if it is nifsak kiluach, even if there's a
exactly.
gap, even
Yeah,
if the gap, there would be usher. In all cases, it would be usher.
yeah. So.
He doesn't want you getting near that burning chaylev.
Exactly. So, don't this is I mean this is actually a real thing in terms of I don't know what modern waxes are made out of in candles. I assume that those are probably I don't know those problematic things at all. But um
By the way, opening if you have boiling water in your in your gas water heater in your basement, and you
mhm.
turn on the hot water and you wash and you pour it onto I don't know your milk your chicken. That's
Yeah,
irui kli
clear,
rishon.
yeah. So,
It traveled a long way, but it's ultimately irui kli rishon.
yeah. That's I mean I don't know, maybe you can it depends on if there's a U bend or something you can make an argument that it's cliche in the somewhere in the pipes, but
There's
uh
no U bends in. Oh, you're saying a right angle even.
yeah.
I don't know if you. Yeah, I don't know if we would go that. Yeah, whatever.
So, all
But it
right.
would have to be Yad Soledet. It would have to be Yad Soledet.
It would. Yeah, this is a whole thing, I mean my sinking
Which
is
is why there's a famous case of there's a famous story. I forget where I read this, but of a woman or a man who was washing dishes, and they had milchiks and fleishiks all together, and they were washing it, and the Rav who wanted to matter it asked, were you wearing gloves? Washing dishes gloves? Because and if the person says no, then then for sure the water was not Yad Soledet.
yeah, because you couldn't keep your hands in there. There's no way. So that's good.
You remember that case,
I,
Paul?
I I heard a similar case about that where it was that they checked the water temperature. I didn't hear about the glove version, but they checked the water temperature. Like it doesn't get hot enough to get Yad Soledet to
No,
be.
but the glove. The idea is the gloves. That the
Okay.
gloves is already a simon. If you're wearing gloves, then maybe the water was really hot.
hmm So, um, was the other I wanted to. You will get also into the question of what if there's soap involved in there's a kula of the Beit Yosef about that potentially if there's soap
That's
involved. What was
Oh
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
soap, it becomes live.
Yeah, we'll get and that'll play into dishwashers. What if you accidentally, right, have a meat spoon in your dishwasher, kind of in a milchik dishwasher or with
Well,
milk.
Rav Moshe says a dishwasher is kli rishon
Yes. Yeah.
because it's heating up the water right there.
So the question would be when does the soap get released and so forth, right? Rav Ovadia
Yeah.
is makil about that and so forth. All right, I do have to end here. So we'll come back next week to Gavar, and more Shach and Taz and some of the other Seifim here. So
Oh
good.
yeah.
Brooke, yeah, this is good stuff. This is important stuff because you get questions of mixtures, somebody and you really want to know what kli was it in, what was the temperature, what kind of interaction was it, top bottom, bottom top, side by side, all that kind of stuff is really important questions to ask before you tell people they can't eat their meal. So, and sometimes you have to tell them they can't eat their meal, right? As long as that happens, but you want to check first. So. All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a good Shabbos. And I'll see you next week.
Check off.